Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Andy, people have been asking us, begging us to get great guests on that will speak the truth about the Lakers, that will spit some fire, that will have some fun. And we got that guy. It is Daman Rangula, your friend, our friend. It's a Rangula Palooza coming up on Locked On Lakers.
Sorry.
That's staying in.
All of it.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends. We get this thing up as bright and early as we can. And of course, Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you go not only to hear us, but to see us. And today that's even more exciting because not only do you get to see us, you get to see Daman Rangula at Daminar. If you are a fan of the Lakers and you are on social media, you know Daman. And we are always excited to get a chance to speak to him. Before we do, though, I want to let you know that today's episode brought to you by Sakara Nutrition. Sakara is a wellness company anchored in food as medicine on a mission to nourish. Go to sakara.com/lockedon20 or enter lockedon20 for 20% off at checkout. Hey, man, how are you?
Good. How are you? Today's been awesome.
Half of the
half awesome. I was about to say, half awesome.
Yeah, they say, guys, that the best two words in sports are Game 7. Sunday didn't quite live up to that. Disney can't quite catch a break these days. Those were two remarkable games on Sunday just for their lopsidedness. I mean, they were over kind of from the beginning. It was remarkable to watch.
I think one of those made sense, right? One of those blowouts, you could understand where the Bucks kind of just hit a wall. They've been kind of, without Chris Middleton, the Bucks were overmatched roster-wise. Giannis was pushing them as far as he could, and he and the entire team just hit a wall. They were stretched thin. They were all kind of overextended in their roles. I am still stunned, and I still keep looking at the score of that Mavs-Suns game. I'm totally shocked that happened.
It's inexplicable in the sense that the simplest explanation is the correct one. They just played like ass.
Yeah.
Like just inexplicably horrible. Like there's no need to get into anything X's and O's. And, Dallas did a very good job being prepared. Jason Kidd has surprised the hell out of me as a coach this season. I was very skeptical about him, both as a coach and as a person. The character stuff with Kidd, make of that what you will, and whether you think he's made the proper amends for the worst of it. But as a coach, he's been fantastic.
The one thing
I did not see this coming.
Yeah, the one thing about Kidd that I'll say, and it's in contrast with somebody like Mark Jackson, who's also kind of been interviewing for coaching roles. I'm impressed in retrospect, and I didn't give enough credit for this, for the fact that Jason Kidd went from 2 head coaching roles to taking the assistant job in LA. Even though, yes, maybe there were rumors about, maybe he's the new coach in waiting, or et cetera, whatever those happen to be. The fact that he still did it, though, at least shows something. And he definitely, it appears like he took something from that experience and it made him a better coach.
What I think is fascinating about this too, and we could talk about what this does for Chris Paul and what this, because what this postseason was supposed to be for him, supposed to be for them, how it changed. But I just look at the West now, and I can't decide if you're any other team, if you're, let alone the Lakers, and we'll figure out how to put Humpty Dumpty back together here over the course of some time. It's a 3 versus 4 in the Western Conference Finals. Yep. Does that mean that there aren't any dominant teams? Because usually, to have a 1 and a 2 gone, both of them, is very unusual. Does that mean that there aren't that many dominant teams, or does it mean that there are just tons of excellent teams?
I think in the West specifically, I did think that the winner of the Eastern Conference, specifically, I actually thought that the winner of Bucks Celtics was going to be the title winner. Just because I felt like the teams in the West, for players great as Luca, for players such as Steph Curry, I still don't look at them and I'm not intimidated by them. And by the way, this makes it even worse that this was the year that the Lakers completely crapped the bed because this opportunity was there. Had they even kind of gotten it together the second half of the season or the last third of a season to at least get to like the play-in game and then see what happens from there. I mean, I'm looking at these teams and I'm like, why not? Why couldn't it have happened? But it felt like the entire team gave up.
Domin,
like
we don't
a
have
quarter
enough
of the way
time for
into it.
why it couldn't have happened.
I know.
I mean, I guess technically it's really up to you. I mean, we got a long offseason to fill. So, but
Yeah.
Andy, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like,
Yeah.
you could look at this and say, hey, you know what? There might be a little bit closer than you think because there's not one dominant team, and I see you shaking your head. You could look at it and say they're so far away because not only do you have 4 teams that are capable of making the Western Conference Finals. Oh, by the way, Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray will be back for Denver next year. New Orleans should theoretically get better. I mean, like there is
Paul George and Kawhi coming back.
Oh, right. I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
the
Like,
neighbors-
Well,
Yeah.
with Kawhi, you never quite know.
That's true.
I mean, we've been waiting for him to
with
come
Paul
back
George,
for
you
a
know,
while.
but like,
Hey, as we get
it's
to it
crowded.
with Anthony Davis, we don't know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, we're getting there. I think I'm more like you, Andy, like judging by your facial expression. I think this tells me, I look at that and say the Lakers are light years away because there's like 7 teams or 8 teams that they got to be better than as opposed to just one dominant team.
Yeah, I think it's whether you think that any one team in the West is dominant than all the others is a separate question than where the Lakers stand in whatever you think the West is. Like, I happen to think that it's fairly wide open in the sense that you could look at a lot of different teams and say, all right, I could see that one coming out of the West next season.
Yep.
But the fact remains that the Lakers, as currently constructed, and even as currently constructed, is doing a lot of work because we know that the roster, even if LeBron, AD, Russ, that trio is back next year, we know a lot's going to be different anyway. So we don't know exactly what as currently constructed even means. But that being said, even if you think it's going to get better, just because it would be difficult to duplicate all of the chaos and all the crap that went wrong last season, even acknowledging that, based on what we've seen, there's still a really big gap either way.
I agree. And I think that's why this offseason has, at least for me as a fan, like I've been very anxious about it because there is no margin for error. People say there's a little bit of a margin error. There is no margin for error. They need to hit on every single move they make, from coach to whatever trades they're going to make to whatever veteran minimum signings they're going to make. They're not going to have a lot of options in terms of how much money they can offer. So all of those decisions need to be pretty perfect for them to be even remotely in this conversation. So on that front, I do agree with you. I just think that this year the level they needed to reach to compete was not as high as it's been in the past, especially in the Western Conference specifically. Next year, with teams getting healthier, with Zion coming back, as you mentioned, Jamal Murray and Paul George, Kawhi, all these guys, I think that goes even further. So, to your point, I'm not coming from a place of optimism. I just pointing out that this year's West was more attainable, and this is the year they completely.
I feel like that should be like the name of the book that's written about this offseason. Not coming from a place of optimism, the story of the Lakers in the summer of 2022. All right, let's stay on this because how they put this thing back together is, as Daman just noted, going to be really complicated, but there is more than one formula. And I actually think the Mavericks say something about that. And so we'll get to all that next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Sakara. Feeling your best starts with what you eat. And Sakara helps you live a healthy, balanced lifestyle and truly enjoy it with delicious, plant-rich, transformational nutrition that helps build a foundation for living in your best body. With Sakara, you get nutrient-dense meals, snacks, and supplements that nourish your body without ever sacrificing taste or quality. Sakara is a wellness company anchored in food as medicine, on a mission to nourish your body through the power of plants. Their nutritionally designed, chef-crafted breakfast, lunch, and dinners are made with powerful plant-rich ingredients, helping to boost your energy, support your digestion, curb your sugar cravings, and get your skin glowing. Plus, delivered directly to your door, ready to eat. From the best-selling Metabolism Super Powder, the Foundation, their daily supplement packs, Sakara's products are designed to support your wellness goals anytime, anywhere. And right now, Sakara is offering our listeners 20% off their first order when they go to sakara.com/lockedon20, or just enter the code LOCKEDON20 at the checkout. That's Sakara, SAKARA.com/lockedon20 to get 20% off your first order. Again, sakara.com/lockedon20.
Okay, so you're the Lakers, and as we know, Dom, the team culture is stars, and that's it. That's how we do things around here, and like we just keep gathering them, and it doesn't matter if they're still good or they fit or whatever. The Dallas Mavericks just made the Western Conference Finals with Luka, who is insane, and who's their second best player? Like Jalen Brunson, like in terms of what people
Spencer
would think of as a
Dinwiddie.
traditional number two, Spencer
Yeah.
Dinwiddie. You know, I mean, they're obviously an excellent team, but Dom, like when you look at the Mavericks as opposed to say, you know, the Warriors, who still have that kind of classic star composition or whatever, and you think about what the Lakers might need to do this offseason, does it open up ideas or places where like of sort of what the template could look like for the Lakers as they try to get competitive quickly again, when you consider that the Mavericks have one star and a bunch of really good role players?
I think it's notable that their big sort of shift happened this season when they got rid of, on paper, who was supposed to be the number 2 star in Porzingis. And I think what happened after that trade was there was a top to bottom cohesive basketball sort of philosophy that was executed upon, and it was everybody's position was very clear within that team, within that organization, and a plan was very clear. Heliocentrism that that Luka Doncic plays with, that team plays with, I'm not generally a big fan of it, but if you're going to do it, commit to it, right? And so I think what they did with that move was commit to a philosophy. First of all, have a philosophy, right? Which is something I would love to question about the Lakers, about exactly what their philosophy happens to be.
Feel free to, Dom. It's okay. this is a safe space. You can do it.
Right.
And so once they did that, they got really organized and everybody understood what they were. And it kind of, you know, they've been up since that point. And I think it's worth also noting that when, okay, they made a decision, they've actually followed through on it. And I think when we go back to the offseason, not pointing to the Russell Westbrook trade individually, but the lack of follow through after that of like, okay, I can disagree with bringing Russell Westbrook in as a fan, but if you're the general manager or you're the front office and you're trading for Russell Westbrook, okay, then follow through. What else do you need to do around that to actually make that work in a cohesive way?
Excuse me, Trevor Ariza.
Exactly.
Trevor
The amount of times we
Kent
heard about
Bazemore.
Trevor Ariza in the offseason was alarming. And, you know, we should have known right away.
Andy and I tried to be optimistic. We neither one of us liked the Westbrook trade. When the rumors were out there, we actually did a show, which, by the way, was one of our best downloaded shows we've ever done, of how it couldn't possibly be true because the Westbrook thing was a terrible idea. And lo and behold, but like we noted at the time, like they didn't have any wings, and the only guy that they were relying on to sort of play the Trevor Ariza position was Trevor Ariza.
Yep.
And that was a bit of a risk going in, Andy, that we did point out, I think.
Well, I mean, they, I think, talked themselves into the idea of THT, you know, being like an undersized but long 3-and-D guy, despite the fact that he had never been anywhere close to that defensively. And, you know, in general, they overestimated. I'm not going to say they overestimated THT's talent because I still think he has a lot of potential. They absolutely overestimated his readiness. Like, he was not ready for this role, which
Yep.
is not, it's not a huge criticism of him because he's an incredibly inexperienced young player, but they put him in this place that he wasn't ready. But going back to
and just finish it, and put him in a position where he couldn't really succeed because there were too many guys who did what he did. And
right.
So the whole idea was
well,
bad.
okay.
Anyway,
This actually, in a lot of ways, gets back to what I was going to mention anyway. When you had originally asked Daman about what you could learn with the Mavericks and what happened for them after trading Porzingis, I think everything Daman mentioned about committing to a plan is totally on point. But a big lesson I would say from that is you can't force fit. And ever since they got Porzingis and Doncic did not work together. Yep. Like, it's not even that Porzingis was awful. I mean, I'm admittedly not a big Porzingis fan. I never have been, going back to his rookie year. But it's not even that he was horrible, but the two of them did not fit together. Yep. And the Lakers roster last season was, on a lot of levels, a bad experiment of forced fit. And they've got to figure out ways to get pieces that actually fit together better, like they had in 2020, for all of the certain limitations they had, even when they won a championship. Those pieces fit together really, really well. They have to really focus as much on just having some type of cohesion roster-wise, as much as just who is the talent that we're bringing in.
I think, well, I mean, this goes back to, do they have a plan, right? What is their, if you look at the last 4 teams remaining in the playoffs, you look at the Warriors, you look at the Mavericks in the West, you look at the Heat, you look at the Celtics. I can look at each one of those teams and I can very clearly state, okay, this is what this team is all about, right? This is their philosophy. This is how they play defensively. This is how they play offensively. This is how they're structured. There's no plan, right? And then so when you get that plan and you get that follow through, that's when the next steps can happen. And I think so when it comes back to this point of what we can learn, I keep coming back to this point of, what is this team about? And to me, the answer should be, and it's very clear, it's very easy. It should be that, okay, we're a LeBron James team, right? Throughout his career, when he is on a team, the teams that succeed are the ones that the teams that just say, okay, we're a LeBron James team. And then what that entails usually leads you to success. And at minimum, you put the team in position to succeed once you just go all in on that concept.
So, but you mentioned like sort of the heliocentrism of Dallas, and they are obviously just built in every way around Luka. Although the defense, they have a structure behind it, because the defense is so good that right. Luka, when he is off or when he's injured or whatever it might be, they can still stay competitive. The Lakers lacked that last year or two. Although they actually, no, that's not totally fair. Last year, actually were still pretty good defensively, even when everybody was missing, better than they had any right to be. But you can Luka's 23. Can you do LeBron? Can you still do, we're a LeBron James team with 38-year-old LeBron as opposed to a 23-year-old Luka?
Here's my thing. If you can't, then shut everything down. Like then just move on. If you can't.
How excited Andy's getting in the top left.
I mean, I'm serious though, right? Like if the answer is, oh, well, we don't think we can do the LeBron thing anymore, the LeBron centricism team, we can't trust him to do that, or he's too old or whatever, we just don't believe it. Okay, I accept that. But then what the follow through of that is strip it to parts and just build the next team. Otherwise, even if you acknowledge that, hey, it's a tougher path for a player as old as LeBron, but this is still our best shot, then you still have to go all in on that concept and just understand that, yes, this may be flawed, but in our list of flawed options, we're going to go with this one that we think is the least flawed option. And that's kind of how I would approach it.
I think it was last week, Stephen A. Smith at ESPN did the whole, like, the Lakers have to trade LeBron thing. Are they looking at the wrong guy, though? Let's start that conversation next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Built Bar. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the birthday cake puffs. Like, imagine dipping your finger into that plastic tub of the birthday cake frosting, and then you open your eyes and you realize it was only 150 calories, but it did have 16 grams of protein. Like, that sounds insane, impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what it is? That's just the birthday cake puff from Built. Seriously, I'm not just saying this because this is the read we're doing right now. These are my favorites. Mine arrived last
They're
week.
good. I got them last week. They're good. Yeah, they are
really
good.
And these are protein-infused marshmallows, which is just crazy in and of itself. Make every day your birthday with Built's birthday cake puffs. They've taken the delicious experience of biting into that first slice of birthday cake, and they've enrobed it. I didn't even know enrobed was a word, but they've enrobed it with 100% white chocolate and added sprinkles. You can eat healthy, but actually enjoy doing it. And these are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently, and you get more health benefits. So go to Built.com, get the birthday cake puffs now. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCK15, 15% off at Built.com.
Okay, so there are a couple different ways, I guess, you could try to do this. You could lean into, guys, you know what? Our best chance of success is LeBron, Anthony Davis, and maybe the next coach. And we're going to try to get to the coaching at some point. I have a conversation with Dom, and like a better coach and a better fit, and somebody who thanks Westbrook for his wine and all these other things would do better. And that's that's the best talent we have. Or you try to trade Westbrook. Or
are you saying, Brian, a thank you note could have saved this season?
Entirely.
Hey, thank you notes are powerful. Hey, let's not discount the power of a thank you note.
This season
it's a lost art.
This season was lost because of Frank Vogel's rude manners. Is what
he
we're
probably just
right
texted
now.
him like TY. Like that's it.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing.
If Vogel had just properly thanked Russell Westbrook, it's Warriors-Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. That's where this whole thing
Trevor Ariza puts up like 15 and 6 all season. You know,
there's a big carryover.
6th man of the year.
I mean, look, Trevor was quite literally on his last legs, but it's a lot easier for him to push through when he sees the synergy between Frank Vogel and his fellow Angelino, fellow Bruin Russell Westbrook.
I think we all know that.
I'm a big believer in connectivity. And I'm a big, big believer in the idea of the trickle-down effect and the butterfly effect and all these different things that, honestly, I never really realized. I always knew that in the end, Vogel needed to be fired, but I never quite until now realized why. This was
an a-hole. Right.
Yeah. I mean, look, he's always been mouthy, that Frank Vogel, and I've always been willing to look past it. But I've really come to realize Russ was correct about this. We owe that guy an apology.
Oh my goodness. If you're looking at it, Dom, and you have LeBron and Westbrook and Anthony Davis in the context that all of these players exist, because you can't remove that. Who do you move? Like if you try to trade someone, if you think you need a trade is the way to go because you just can't do it through free agency, and Kendrick Nunn and THT might not be as appealing as you want that to be. What do you do?
So I think the question of trading LeBron, I think that the franchise is at a point where they're all about, doing right by their main star. And I agree with that. I think that if there's one thing that the Lakers are known for at this point, starting with Magic Johnson, obviously, and how close of a relationship he had with ownership and all that, to recently Kobe Bryant's last extension, when clearly, it was overvalued, overpriced in terms of the market, but that was valuable. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, when they gave him this is not a slam on Kobe. When they gave him the extension, he had yet to actually play.
Right.
It was sight unseen.
And if I remember correctly,
bidding against nobody.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, they explicitly said that it was important for them to make sure that Kobe was still the highest paid player in the NBA.
Yeah.
And so we can look back at that and say, okay, that may have led to LeBron joining the franchise where he wanted to be a part of a franchise that treats its players like that. So I think that continuing that tradition is the one area where I'd say I think it's okay to keep that going. So now the question...
Can I stop you real quick, though? The only thing I worry about there is the other part of the Kobe extension was another moment of great uncertainty around the franchise, a moment where things did not look good. And this is something that I want to get into. We're going to keep. I think we'll hopefully be able to do a second episode here. I think they use that sometimes both as an ethos, take care of your stars, but also as a distraction. Do not look behind the curtain because look, we're giving your favorite player an extension and giving Kobe that contract calmed a lot of people down. And it was this shiny thing that they put out in front and said, look, but Kobe's going to be here. We signed. I'm not saying it worked seamlessly, but I do think there was an element of that in what they were doing at the time.
Well, it's funny, actually, because if it was meant to be a shiny distraction, I don't actually think that it worked. But the reason it didn't work is because Kobe, for understandable reasons, was not always a given to be on the court in the first place. And there's only so much distraction that can be provided by Kobe still being on the team, being set up as a lifer, but in street clothes, you know what I mean? Or, playing as a lesser version of himself, but also because they very clearly used Kobe as an excuse to not rebuild. Like they used the last 3 seasons that Kobe was on the team as an excuse to not do the thing that they don't want to do. And they got very lucky in the way they fell ass backwards in the lottery picks, despite their best attempts.
Lucky?
Well, yes, obviously the league played a role in interfering because they owed it to the Lakers because of #basketball reasons.
Guys, we can give you 15 straight number 2 picks. Number 1 is a little pushing it a little, but we can give you the number 2s. Okay?
But the Lakers were chasing 8 seeds. I mean, because they felt that it was, it was unbecoming to have Kobe on a roster and not try to be as competitive as possible, even if it was fake competitiveness.
I just mean it in a way that it can be in multiple things. This is totally multiple things can be true at once. They can absolutely believe that it is best to take care of your stars, and it's part of the legacy of the franchise and all that, while they also believe that they need to throw some stuff out at people and show that they're trying to compete. And all we do is try to win titles and this and that, which can be it's admirable, I guess, but it's also can be very limiting in moments where there is literally nothing on the menu that can get you a title. When you pretend that there is, you do stupid things like calling Carlos Mozgov and Carlos Boozer and all that. That leads you to do dumb things. And there is a point at which it is counterproductive to play into the aesthetics of always trying to look like you do right by your stars in every situation.
I think that's a really fair pushback. I think the one wrinkle here is that LeBron is, despite his age and his mileage, is still playing at a level that is shockingly high, right? And so that from that perspective, you can understand where it's like, okay, he's reached a certain age, and at some point it's going to be just like Kobe. It was just like one play and his career was basically over. That may happen, something like that may happen. But in terms of planning, I just think it's a flawed option to always go to that thing. But I think in this case is the best option. And so kind of the point of that is, okay, LeBron is here. Whether he signs an extension or not is a very interesting question as a part of this. The Lakers will certainly offer it, and whether or not he takes it is going to be very interesting. The Russell Westbrook situation, and I'm jumping to Russell Westbrook for a reason, that is, I think that enough has been done, enough has been said to where it's pretty inevitable that they will find a way to move off from him. I think what I've been encouraged by over the last 2-3 weeks or so is that there is still appetite to take on salary like Russell Westbrook's because it's an expiring contract, and there's more options than I thought available. None of them are good. None of them were going to be good, but it's at least something can happen with that, right? The thing though, let me ask you this. Can I expect more than 50 to 55 games of good LeBron next year? Is that a reasonable question?
Expect. It's an interesting word.
Because when you're planning, you're like, okay, what can I expect? My honest answer is I think that that's pretty much the highest point. Like, I don't think we're going to get 50 to 55 games of good LeBron, right? And I don't think more can be expected at his age. That is my expectation, both in terms of games sitting out and in terms of games where he just doesn't have it. Like, it's just the effort is not there on both ends, and he's more of a playmaker. He's kind of feeling his way through the game. That is my expectation. Is that fair?
I think that's fair, but it's also troubling because if that's who your team is built around, unless the supporting
If
cast,
the sun that they're revolving around only rises 55 times out of 82.
So that's a problem,
and
right?
Its yellow is often sputtering.
So you
Filled
would
with
say
spots.
I think, is it safe to say that you would say that while it's troubling, it's probably in the neighborhood of being true? 50 to
Yes,
55?
that's part of why
Okay.
it's troubling, Domin.
Let me ask you this. So that I, at least while acknowledging it's troubling, I still look at the situation, and from a player of LeBron James's age, I say, you know what? That's reasonable. Like, I understand that there may be another outlier season where LeBron maybe pushed that to 65, 70 games, but I'm going to go in expecting 55, let's say. For the YouTube viewers, that was awesome. That was perfect. Let me ask you this. Can you expect 50 to 55 games next season of good Anthony Davis?
Okay. I am going to need 24 hours to sit on this question.
But you see, okay.
Because this is the first, we're going to do something we've never done on Locked On Lakers since our coup that forced Anthony out of the show. We're going to have a cliffhanger. Coming up Tuesday, we will tackle the question of Anthony Davis and whether or not you can expect a healthy Anthony Davis 50 to 55 games. And if the answer is no, what the heck do you do about that? With Daman Rangula, Rangula Palooza continues on Tuesday. Lock On Lakers on YouTube is where you go to see all of this happening. We'll be back with more of this tomorrow.